Freddie had become detached from everything, almost stoic. He said very little to Gramps, and when he would tell Freddie stories, it seemed as if they almost went through him. Gramps recognized the signs and symptoms. Freddie had been through so much. He had to make some very difficult choices in life with little help or guidance. Gramps' empathy and support could only help so much. Freddie would have to embrace self-reliance and fortitude if he was to make a change for the better in his well-being. But Gramps knew a few places Freddie could go to get the resources he would need on this leg of his journey. A house near Summersville, where a VTU doctoral candidate once lived, which had a wealth of burnt books he could read. The other location was a top-secret military installation which concealed one of the most important intelligence facilities in the United States. Aside from its many projects like Project Siphon, EX-7 to Pulsar, and Project Locust, they were researching human responses to neurotransmitter testing and comprehensive psychiatric evaluations in conjunction with West Tech to improve FEV results. The facility was heavily guarded to this very day, but if Freddie could get past security and could locate the correct room, he might find some answers. There would be a set of halo tapes marked blank in the side research room. These stored research information from before the war. Freddie had to decide how much his happiness was worth to him and if it would be worth the risks. And Gramps couldn't make this choice for him. He could only support his decisions either way. One of the hardest things about all forms of mental illness is we usually have to take the journey to getting healthier on our own. It is about as easy as asking someone with 2 broken legs to run to a hospital. Freddie would have to have the tapes deciphered and encoded if he could even get them. Fortunately, he knew someone who could help. Gramps told him where the house was, so Freddie loaded the coordinates into his Pip-Bo and headed off. He located the house without event, but was cautious as there were blood eagles nearby. As he entered, he couldn't believe how many books had been left behind. A wealth of information, and a server reset all in the same place. So he gathered as many as he could hold. optimistic that some of them would have some answers that he needed to overcome the intense and overwhelming feelings he was experiencing. It was more than just a bad day or sadness. Even the decision to wake up in the morning and open the store was almost impossible. He didn't want to do anything anymore. He had no hopes or dreams. He looked forward to nothing. He was starting to believe that feeling was a curse and laborious. Maybe not feeling anything at all ever again was a viable answer. But Freddie was about to learn some new concepts and approaches. There were many reasons Freddie felt the way he did, and repressing his anger had turned toxic. Getting the information would be the easy part. But learning how and when to apply it would prove challenging the rest of his life. We all must start somewhere, and those first initial steps can be daunting and overwhelming. Freddie found several good resources and read them with a voracious appetite. You Can Feel Good Again by Richard Carlson taught Freddie that as cognitive creatures, we are always thinking. This book gave Freddie some tools to correct negative thought processing. Wherever You Go, There You Are by John Kabat-Zinn taught Freddie about mindfulness and meditation and learning to live with yourself and circumstances. Toxic Parents by Dr. Susan Forward gave Freddie many examples on generational programming and abuse, demonstrating how each generation hands down the abusive programming they received as children. Freddie decided his life and health were worth the fight at Sugar Grove. He battled his way past turrets, past protectrons, and past gutsies. He didn't know if he could even find the Halo tapes, but he was bound to try. Once inside, he still had a fight ahead of him. But he located the room. And with the last gutsy down, he found the tapes he needed. And he grabbed them all, hoping Davenport could encode them. Freddie had no idea the wealth of information that had been stored on the tapes. But with his backpack full, he snuck out of Sugar Grove and made the long journey over the savage divide to see the overseer. Freddie had high hopes and great expectations. Freddie had a hard time asking for help, but the overseer, having watched Freddie grow up, knew her support was needed. She told him to take the tapes downstairs to Davenport so he could process them, then broadcast them to the upstairs screen. Davenport took the halo tapes from Freddie and began processing them. He would start casting them as soon as they were processed. Every creature on Earth has one primary directive encoded into their genes: survival and propagation. From plant species to aquatic, all the way up the evolutionary tree to large mammals. Every creature has developed a set of skills to take care of itself, to defend itself, and to continue its lineage. Some creatures develop dependency on another creature of a different species to achieve this security. While other creatures take care of another species for a time to ensure their own survival. As tragic as it may seem, both species benefit and secure a future for the other. Within those sets of instructions or instincts are predetermined sets of skills unique to each species. No one expects a fish to climb a tree or an elephant to dive the depths of the sperm whale. This is because their determinants or programming, which dictates how they respond to their environment, keeps them within said boundaries for the best chance of survival and propagation. As any given species evolves and adapts to its environment, those tiny changes over time keep the cycle going. These accumulated modifications drive the ongoing cycle of evolution, allowing them to better survive and reproduce in their specific ecosystem. Homo sapiens, the species that includes all living humans, have existed for around 300,000 years. The brain of Homo sapiens has evolved over time, with the shape and size of the brain changing in response to cultural, linguistic, and technological advances. The reptilian brain, also known as the brainstem, is the oldest part of the mammalian brain and is responsible for basic survival functions: alertness, eating, and basic procreation. The mammalian brain is often called the emotional brain because it's involved in our emotional responses to social interactions. It's responsible for our feelings of attraction, acceptance, rejection, and status. The human brain is a scaled-up primate brain with many similar cellular components and metabolic costs. However, the human brain has several unique features that give it cognitive abilities that are different from other primates. Damage to this sophisticated organ can impair or disrupt the brain's functions, causing a range of effects, including cognitive changes, difficulty processing information, understanding others, or expressing thoughts. Other cognitive changes include memory loss, impaired decision-making, and difficulty focusing. Physical changes: affected balance, blurred vision, headache, and seizures. Emotional and behavioral changes: catastrophic reactions like depression or anxiety. There are many factors that can contribute to mental illness, including biological factors. These include chemical imbalances in the brain or genetics. Life experiences. These include abuse, trauma, or other adverse childhood experiences. They can also include stressful life events like the death of a loved one, divorce, or financial problems. Substance use. Alcohol and recreational drugs can increase the risk of mental illness. Medical conditions. Chronic medical conditions like cancer, diabetes, or traumatic brain injuries can increase the risk of mental illness. Social factors. These include feelings of loneliness or isolation, discrimination, or stigma. Because we are creatures with large cognitive brains, the degrees of trauma affect each individual differently. But our survival instincts are still stored in our reptilian brain. Anytime we feel threatened or are in danger, our fear becomes hypersensitive and quickly turns to anger. It is natural and forced to be. Our anger allows us to lash out. Once we are safe again, our adrenal glands stop flowing, out chemicals balance back out, and we can level off. But what happens when we are always in a hypersensitive state of alert, when our anger must be repressed? We never have the opportunity to lash out and get to a safe place. That repressed anger morphs into depression. People with depression often turn anger inward or internalize it. This can lead to feelings of shame and guilt. The human experience has changed drastically over many millennia, but most substantially in the last 300 years of our existence. With the elimination of predators in most populated areas, advances in technology, and cultural advances in social structures, humans are not only living longer lives, but in the most desirable time in their history. Attributed to such advancements, the human biological structure, and more specifically, the brain, has not had a chance to catch up to this new world we have created. A human child's experience has changed drastically as well. Instinctively, they cling to their mothers and have a sincere narcissistic view of reality. This is their mode of preservation. But they retain their fight or flight programming that had evolved throughout the course of our existence. which at one time kept them alive, ensuring survival of the species. There is no such thing as an ideal childhood. Humanity is on a broad spectrum that spans cultures, geographies, economic status, physical well-being, and so forth. But the gray area between great and horrible has a lot left to be desired. As a child's brain develops, assuming there are no physical hindrances, the daily drips of the programming they receive not only changes their social perceptions, but over time will change the chemical makeup of the brain itself. This determines how they will personally survive in life, as each individual does the best they can with the programming they received as children. Therefore, this can explain why one person can excel at any given activity in life. Perhaps they had a parent that could guide them, and the connections to achieve such prominent goals in life. But that does not mean they didn't work hard or suffer along their journey. They only had the tools, support, and survival skills to deal with their situation, and their preparation met opportunity. But just as a computer or protectron or video game is programmed to achieve a certain set of tasks or goals, so is each creature on Earth, which becomes very complicated when considering cognitive primates. Social structuring within any given culture has a set of rules they'll keep the population moving forward, so to speak. Anyone existing outside these structures is a liability to what was once many thousands of years ago considered in the normal range of the human experience. The simple combination of brain trauma and child abuse produces such results in society. Ironically enough, the people we fear and view on the fringe are no different than any of us. They are all doing the best they can with the programming they have. That programming, whether chemo, genio, traumatic, determines how that person will respond and survive. Therefore, free will cannot exist, or at most, only exists on a micro level. From the waitress to the CEO to the homeless drug addict and everyone in between, they are doing the best they can with the programming they have. So with that statement professed, it would be reasonable to conclude that no one is condemned worthy. We don't have to like or approve of their actions, but their actions, being a direct result of all their programming, was forced to be. And in the confines of a complex social structure, each person pays the price, good, bad, or in the vast gray area, of the choices they make based on their programming. With the results of each decision made intertwined with circumstances. That is the truth about human nature. And where we are now as a species.
No way. God created us and gave us all free will so we can choose to do good or bad in our lives.
Oh, fucking Christ. Here we go. Which God? The Christian God, I assume, or the thousands of other gods man created before it? And if God was real and loved us unconditionally, why would there even be a thing such as mental illness? That dictates how a person conducts themselves through this world in a specific culture at this specific time in humanity's history. And after a lifetime of torturing, killing, and destroying the lives of seemingly innocent people, someone can accept Christ and go straight to heaven. That by default makes God a sadist, or more likely a made-up fairy tale that people used over eons to not only explain the vast unknown, but to control and manipulate the masses. And no one finds a specific God, whatever their culture, on their own. They are programmed to believe, usually at a very young age by parents or family members, in almost all cases, proving that programming dictates determinants. And in most cases of older people turning to religion, it is usually a result of a traumatic experience or a time in life with long suffering they hadn't the programming to deal with and process.
Yeah, well, my church helps people with mental illness.
The fuck it does, or ever did. The church's business model is based on a sick cycle of Munchausen syndrome, which keeps you unwell and dependent upon the system. Walk away. Not to say there are not some wisdoms to be found in theology, but be cautious and take a parabolic approach when leaning on such statements. If you or someone you know is hurting or suffering from depression, get help. You are not weak because you can't deal with it. You are human.